Good morning. How's everybody? You guys doing well? Question for you. Show of hands. How many folks are very comfortable using large language models in your everyday jobs? How many of you are statisticians? Yeah. No. That did both. I was going to say statisticians that actually use this stuff can go take a coffee break. The rest of us can hang out and figure out what's going on here with this. So large language models, what are we talking about? In colloquial terms, we're talking about ChatGPT, but there's a whole range of them that are out there. And these are not only becoming all the rage in the workplace, they're becoming all the rage in measurement areas as well. We actually at Ipsos really use this on a daily basis now in our general work. So the types of things that you're using to edit, to take transcriptions and summarize them, all that kind of good stuff. But for all those of us in this room, we're interested, how do you take that next step and where does it go with analytics? Where does it go with survey research and how might large language models help us in this regard? So what is a large language model? For those of you that haven't really gotten deep into this, by and large, it is a massive set of computers, neural networks, a whole range of things that I'm sure some of our colleagues in here can give us great details on. They are targeted to go out and consume as much information that is out there as possible, and essentially to be able to generate text. It is called large language models because it's really text-based right now in terms of what it is that it's doing. And we're seeing this being used quite a bit now across our industry. In the commercial space, it's being used a lot. For those of us who do a lot of the probability types of things, it's starting to filter in. So things like open-ended coding, translations, data cleaning. Some are even using it more for predictive types of things, synthetic respondents. There are papers out there that are focused on that. I want to take it really easy today. I just want to know, can I use this to help me code open-ended answers? The base thing that we've ever wanted to do, right? So long story short, I've got my methods here, but it doesn't really matter. All you need to know is that Nick and I have, Nick actually, and Raleigh launched as part of their panelist first approach, just a 2-question survey that every now and then we will target to some of our panelists that says, hey, one, do you like being part of the knowledge panel? Yes or no? If you do, why? If you don't, why not? So we just get some feedback on that. My interest was just, hey, Nick, can you give me some open-ended answers that I can play with? So we took a random set and we've got about 270 of these. Half of them were positive, half of them were negative, and they're randomized so that we can get a whole range of different topics. And then the idea was, let's test this with some large language models. One of the cool things at Ipsos is we have something called Ipsos Facto, which is just a platform. And yeah, it's a cool name, isn't it? And it allows us to actually have access to all of those major models. So I can click up on my desktop, I can decide not only ChatGPT, but which version do I want, which one do I want from Google. Very cool. So I just simply took the OpenAI ones, and OpenAI has 3 basic versions, 3.5, 4.0, and 4.32K, whatever that means. But there's 3 versions. Each one is slightly different. My basic questions that we'll look at today are, what happens when you run the open-ended answers through 3 different models? And what happens when you run them through one model 3 different times? What do you get? So the first question then becomes, what if we were to use different versions of ChatGPT? And effectively, as I mentioned before, there are those 3 versions. What's the difference between a version? Well, it's just like any version release of any software, right? The first one has rudimentary stuff. It's just been put out there. The next one, the models are different. It runs a little faster. It's got some more features, so on and so forth. The data that's trained on is a little bit different. So each one is subsequently a little bit better. And basically what I did is you can see down at the bottom, you're going to hear the term prompt. Prompt is going to become the new, did you show me my question? Did you show me your questionnaire? That's going to be the new thing we're going to start having in all of our publications and things. At the back in your appendix is going to be, what prompt did you use? Because the prompt being what you typed in to ChatGPT to make it do its thing. We'll just set that one aside and realize that if you change your prompt, you're always going to get different answers. So you need to know what the prompt is. So we're not going to read all that, but basically I told it, hey, using those cool natural language processing skills that you have, can you take this set of open-ended answers and give me the basic themes that come out of this? And here's what we got. So 3 different runs across 3 different models. So the first one, and I will confess that my eyesight these days trying to see all the way down here is not quite as good, but you guys can see that you go on the top line, looks pretty good, right? We got satisfaction, we got surveys and participation, we got surveys, earning potential. Basically kind of the same topic, slightly different codes. As you start to go down there in the long tail, you start to see that things get different and different, right? The labels become different. The percentages next to the thing is I also ask it, okay, not only give me the theme, but how often did this theme show up? And the interesting thing is when we ran it with 3.5 in the very top, you can see it's what, 30, 20 something percent, but then we jumped to 40 and 42%. So the models are doing something slightly different. They're taking the same data that gets input and they're giving us slightly different answers. So next question becomes, okay, so that was 3 different models, but what if I just took one model and I ran it 3 different times? Because in theory, if Andrew's running a model, he's gonna wanna make sure that he's getting the same results every time, right? What happens? Well, it's a little better, but yeah, I ran these 3 different days, 3 different times of the day. And again, you get somewhat similar, particularly with those large categories, right? And you get the long tail and it starts to get different. The percentages then are kind of rounded. If you start to look, you can say, oh, well, wait a minute. If I were looking at these, this one's number 3 over here, but it's number 2 over there and the percentage is about the same. I liken this to, I had 3 grad students, all coders. I didn't tell them what to do. I sent them off to different rooms and they came back to me with 3 different code books. That's effectively what these large language models are doing. So the implications here then is, on the one hand, this is super fast. I can run 1,000 of these through. I took 270, but I could have run thousands through 60 seconds, boom, it's coding them. That is really super cool. There's essentially what I might call construct validity, because when I look at the codes versus what I would have assigned, they're logical. They make sense to me, even if they were slightly different across each model. Problem though becomes, we do get different labeling of themes that could lead you down a different road. If you ask it to give you actual percentages, it's giving you very different types of things. So again, we're seeing a lack of replicability is a big issue here. So to the degree that that is important to us as social scientists, that's kind of an issue. Last but not least, you notice some of those percentage added to more than 100%. That's because the researcher, I will confess, didn't tell in my prompt, hey, only give 1 code per answer. So it had multiple themes sometimes, and it counted those multiple themes. So why is this happening? Well, I'm not going to go through the whole laundry list, but the biggest one is because there is randomization built in. These models have randomization built in because that's the way they work. And so it's logical when you understand that if you run it multiple times, you might get similar things, but you're never going to get exactly the same thing each time. And then again, as we talked about before, models are different. The way things are done are different. The companies are different. This is kind of similar to the Twitter issue that we had back when Twitter was something you could actually use as a data source, I guess. Where you would try to get data at different points in time, and it was hard to go back. You couldn't replicate really what was going on unless you had exactly those data and somebody handed them to you. So that's what an issue that we have here. So what are the key takeaways then? This is a fantastic tool for our industry, and we're going to learn to harness it, and we're going to learn to harness it in fantastic ways. There are a lot of folks out there that are doing some great work on this. It is not point and click. That's going to be my biggest takeaway here. All of you, all of us that have become experts in our field need this as a tool to make it work. But if we're not part of the equation, this ain't gonna work. So if you were to just take the simple example that we might have and how you might use this, you could use this as a first pass at making your code book. Run your stuff through, it'll give you the themes. You can then go in, decide what you want, rerun models again and have those apply. Super speed, it allows you to start, but you've got to have the expertise. We've got to bring the expertise to the table on these types of things. And again, as I mentioned before, it's going to be interesting is that what was your prompt is going to be the new what was your questionnaire, because that's going to become a really important thing, as well as what model did you run and maybe when did you run it kind of thing. Those are the kind of things that we're going to have. But again, I think the big takeaway here is this is a fantastic tool. We're on the precipice of doing, again, incredible things in our industry, but we've got to be there to help drive it, and we've got to understand what it is that we're using in terms of these tools. 10 seconds left. How's that?